Fast and Loud is no more. How many times you can buy a car, fix a car, sell a car, and it was time to make some changes to make it more fun.
Richard Rawlings didn't lose his show. He walked away from it at its peak, and the internet completely rewrote his story. At the height of Fast and Loud, he had millions watching, and Gas Monkey Garage had become a powerhouse brand. But when the cameras stopped, rumors exploded, painting a picture that wasn't even close to reality. The truth is far more calculated and unexpected than most fans realize. So why did Richard Rawlings really walk away from success? And what actually happened after the show ended that nobody talks about? Join us as we uncover what really happened to Richard Rawlings after Fast and Loud. The man before the garage. Richard Rawlings was a car person before he was anything else. He attended auto shows with his father as a child. He bought his first car at 14. He graduated from Eastern Hills High School in Fort Worth and began accumulating the kind of practical automotive knowledge that does not come from technical school, but from spending more time in and under vehicles than away from them. His early adult life did not look like the beginning of a television career. In 1993, he married Karen K. Grames, and that marriage ended within a year. In 1999, he started a printing and advertising company called Lincoln Press, which was the kind of venture that pays the bills rather than the kind that defines a life. He married Suzanne Marie Mergel the same year in Las Vegas, and that marriage lasted a decade before ending in 2009. The move that eventually led to everything else came in 2002, when Rawlings launched Gas Monkey Garage in Dallas. He sold Lincoln Press in 2004 to focus entirely on the garage. The shop's premise was simple: find classic and hot rod automobiles that needed work, restore and customize them, and sell them for a profit. It was not a novel business model in the custom car world, but Rawlings' specific talent for finding interesting cars and his even more specific talent for making the negotiation process entertaining made it work in a way a less charismatic operator would not have. He was not the most technically sophisticated builder in Dallas. He was, by his own admission, more businessman than fabricator. But he understood cars the way a dealer understands merchandise: by feel, by market, by the specific gut sense of what something is worth before anyone else in the room has reached the same number. That skill, combined with the personality that came with it, is what caught the Discovery Channel's attention. In 2007, Rawlings and co-pilot Dennis Collins attempted to break the legendary 1979 Cannonball Run record, the cross-country drive from New York City to Los Angeles that had been set at 32 hours and 51 minutes. They also made the attempt in a black Ferrari 550 modified with extra fuel cells. They claimed to have broken the record. The claim was disputed by people who had strong opinions about the validity of cannonball attempts, which is a community that has very strong opinions about everything. Whether or not the record was broken in any official sense, the story generated exactly the kind of attention that Rawlings was good at generating: loud, colorful, impossible to ignore, and centered on the personality of a man who thought the speed limit was a suggestion and the existing record was a challenge rather than a benchmark. The cannonball attempt and the growing reputation of Gas Monkey Garage put Rawlings on the radar of the Discovery Channel. The show that would make him internationally famous premiered in June 2012 and became a hit almost immediately. But what actually made Fast and Loud work? And who was the other person without whom the show might never have succeeded the way it did? The show that changed everything. Fast and Loud. Fast and Loud premiered on the Discovery Channel on June 6, 2012. And the formula was exactly what it said in the title: cars, speed, noise, and a man in a bandana and sunglasses driving the entire operation on sheer force of personality. The show followed Rawlings and the Gas Monkey Garage crew as they found run-down classic cars, restored and customized them on a deadline, and flipped them for profit. The deadline pressure was the dramatic engine of each episode. Every build had a specific financial target and a specific time constraint, and the fun was watching whether the crew could hit both before the clock ran out, and Rawlings' profit margin disappeared. At its simplest, it was a show about buying low, building well, and selling high, and it attracted an audience that found that premise endlessly satisfying. The show's most important ingredient, however, was not Rawlings. It was Aaron Kaufman, the bearded, methodical, technically gifted lead mechanic who provided the actual answers to the builds that Rawlings' deals created. The two of them were the best possible television pairing. Rawlings was energy, salesmanship, and vision. Kaufman was execution, expertise, and restraint. Rawlings would find a car with potential and bring it back to the garage with a story about how much money they were going to make when they were done with it. Kaufman would look at the car and tell him how long it was actually going to take and why. The dynamic between them, part showman and part craftsman, generated the kind of genuine friction that no reality television producer can manufacture, but every reality television producer spends their career trying to find. The audience at its peak in December 2013 reached 3.176 million American viewers in a single episode, which made Fast and Loud one of the most watched automotive shows in cable television history. The supporting cast contributed significantly to the show's texture. Christy Brimberry, the office manager, was the organizational spine of Gas Monkey Garage and one of the few people who could manage Rawlings' energy productively, rather than simply being swept along by it. The build crew brought individual personalities that made the garage feel like a real workplace rather than a set. Misfit Garage, the spin-off that emerged from a staged conflict between Rawlings and several employees who were ostensibly fired, gave the Gas Monkey universe a second location and a different energy. Rawlings produced Misfit Garage, while also starring in Fast and Loud, which gave him producer credits on both shows and a financial interest in the broader ecosystem rather than just the primary program. For several years, the entire enterprise worked at every level simultaneously. The show was working, the numbers were growing, and the brand was expanding. And then something happened that permanently changed the dynamic of Fast and Loud. In 2017, after 10 seasons, Aaron Kaufman walked out of Gas Monkey Garage and did not return. What he said about why he left and what it cost the show tells you more about the truth behind the cameras than almost anything else in the show's history. The departure that changed the show forever. Aaron Kaufman announced his departure from Gas Monkey Garage during a March 2017 episode of Fast and Loud. He had just returned from a period of time away from the garage, and when he came back, he told Rawlings that his vacation from Gas Monkey is going to be a permanent one. He had spent some time thinking, and in his words, he had other cats to skin and other things to get into. The episode did not fully capture the weight of what was happening. It presented a departure that the show's format framed as manageable, as something the garage would absorb and continue from. Rawlings wrote on the Gas Monkey Garage blog that Kaufman's departure was not my decision and came completely out of left field, and acknowledged it would be a painstaking process moving forward without his talents. He was right about the painstaking part. When Kaufman spoke more directly about his reasons in subsequent interviews, the picture that emerged was not of a simple creative disagreement. It was the picture of a man who had spent a decade watching the gap between what television required and what he actually wanted to do as a craftsman grow wider until it was no longer manageable. He told Art of Gears that he wanted to build cars that were big and complex and took the time they needed to take, while the television format required cars that were smaller and faster and fit into an episodic deadline structure that he found genuinely draining. He told Restomod Air, more bluntly, that he and Rawlings were having difficulty being in the same building together, and acknowledged straightforwardly that it was his building, it's his show, it's his operation. Kaufman's departure was the departure of a man who had outgrown both the format and the partnership, and he handled it by leaving cleanly rather than by allowing the situation to deteriorate further. The split turned out to be professional but not personally permanent. Kaufman and Rawlings have maintained what both describe as a genuine friendship, with the personal respect surviving the professional end. Kaufman founded ArcLight Fabrication in Dallas, a boutique shop specializing in the 1957 to 1979 Ford F-100 trucks that represent his deepest automotive passion. He briefly returned to television with Shifting Gears with Aaron Kaufman on Discovery in 2018, but the show lasted only 2 seasons and confirmed what the rest of the industry already suspected. Kaufman, on his own, was a different kind of television personality than Kaufman opposite Rawlings. The friction had been the product. Without it, both men were doing their own version of what they had always done, separately, and neither produced the chemistry the original combination had generated. Fast and Loud without Aaron Kaufman was a different show, and its audience knew it immediately. The build crew carried on. New mechanics brought new skills. The cars kept coming. But the absence of the dynamic that had defined the show's identity was visible in every episode that followed the departure, in the way that an important instrument's absence is audible in a piece of music, even if the people listening cannot immediately name which instrument has stopped playing. Rawlings was still Rawlings, loud, confident, deal-making, always moving. But without the counterweight of Kaufman's technical authority and comedic straight-facedness, there was nothing for the energy to push against. And television runs on friction. The show continued for several more seasons after Kaufman left, but it was running into a different set of problems at the same time. Rawlings was not just managing a television show. He was running a restaurant empire, dealing with a lawsuit that could have cost him $6 million, going through his second divorce from the same woman, and filing his own lawsuit against Discovery Channel. How did all of that hit simultaneously? And how much of it was visible to the audience watching at home? The lawsuits and the years when everything got complicated. The Gas Monkey Bar and Grill lawsuit arrived in 2018 and was considerably more complex than the personal situation. The legal action centered on the Gas Monkey-themed restaurant franchise that had licensed the brand name from Rawlings. The lawsuit alleged that Rawlings had failed to promote the restaurant as contractually agreed and had made disparaging remarks about the establishment that had contributed to its financial difficulties. There were counterclaims about the quality of what was being served under the Gas Monkey name and claims about counterfeit alcohol at the establishment. The total figure in dispute was approximately $6 million. The legal battle was messy and public and landed in a period when Rawlings was also managing the Aaron Kaufman aftermath and the declining trajectory of the show. It was eventually settled in 2021 without a trial, with the restaurant rebranding as Amplified Live and severing its connections to the Gas Monkey brand entirely. The settlement terms were not publicly disclosed. Rawlings also sued Discovery Communications in 2018, claiming the network was limiting his business opportunities and restricting deals he wanted to make outside the scope of Fast and Loud. The suit was settled without going to trial, but its existence told a story about the relationship between Rawlings and the network that had made him famous. A relationship that had become transactional in ways that were no longer comfortable for the star. Rawlings had been signed to a deal that gave Discovery significant influence over what he could and could not do professionally during the term of the contract. For a man whose entire identity was built on being unconstrained by other people's rules, operating under those restrictions had become genuinely difficult. The lawsuit was the formal version of a complaint he had been making informally for years. It was settled. The restrictions presumably remained until the contract ended. Richard Rawlings announced in December 2020 on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast that Fast and Loud was finished. His reasoning was consistent with everything he had been saying and doing for the previous several years. The episodic format of a Discovery Channel show imposed constraints on the kinds of projects Gas Monkey Garage could take on. The formula that had been fresh in 2012 had, by 2020, become so familiar that executing it well was less interesting than it had once been. And Rawlings had been watching what happened to Aaron Kaufman's post-Gas Monkey ambitions and had reached similar conclusions through a different path. The show was no longer the right vehicle for what he wanted Gas Monkey Garage to become. The ambitions that Rawlings articulated in the post-Fast and Loud period were genuinely different from what the show had been doing. He wanted to pursue extreme and unique projects without having to clear it through a network development process that he had found increasingly frustrating. The Joe Rogan announcement was the public version of a decision that had clearly been made long before the cameras stopped rolling on season 16. Wheels and Deals, the show that Rawlings launched in February 2021, was built around a lighter and more flexible format than Fast and Loud had ever been able to operate with. It was closer to the original spirit of what Gas Monkey Garage had always been: finding interesting vehicles, making deals, seeing what happened next. In February 2025, Rawlings used the show to announce Gas Monkey Buys, a program through which vehicle owners could submit details of what they had and potentially receive a quote from the Gas Monkey operation. He described it as a heck of a good time in my life, buying and selling cars and motorcycles. The phrasing was entirely characteristic: simple, direct, no performance of satisfaction, just the genuine article. The show ended, the new format launched, and Rawlings kept moving. But the internet had a different version of his story, and the invented version had a life of its own. What did the rumor machine say happened to Richard Rawlings, and how wrong was it? The rumors that built a fake biography. The internet's version of what happened to Richard Rawlings after Fast and Loud was built from approximately the same materials as its versions of what happened to Danny Coker and various other automotive television personalities, a small amount of genuine information about real legal events, a very large amount of speculation, AI-generated images and fake screenshots, and the specific YouTube ecosystem that rewards dramatically titled videos, regardless of whether their content is true. Rawlings was in jail. Rawlings had been sentenced to prison. Rawlings had a terminal illness. Rawlings was promoting CBD oil on Fox News and defrauding his fans. Each claim circulated in its own version, generating clicks and watch time for people who had nothing to do with Gas Monkey Garage and no verified information about what Rawlings was actually doing. The actual legal record told a completely different story. The civil lawsuits involving the Gas Monkey Bar and Grill and the O'Reilly marketing dispute and the Discovery Communications contract were real, documented in court filings, and resolved through settlements rather than trials. None of them involved criminal charges. None of them resulted in a conviction. None of them put Rawlings anywhere near a jail cell. The civil lawsuit process, which is the mechanism by which businesses and individuals resolve contractual disputes in the American legal system, had been conflated by the clickbait economy with the criminal justice system in a way that was entirely without factual basis. Dallas County court records, checked by multiple journalists in 2025, showed no active criminal proceedings involving Rawlings. The clickbait had manufactured a legal crisis that did not exist. Rawlings' actual activities during the period when the internet was variously placing him in prison, in a hospital, and at a Fox News studio selling fraudulent supplements were documented on his social media accounts, his YouTube channel, and in local Dallas coverage of the Gas Monkey operation. He was at Gas Monkey Garage, producing content for the over 600 video library on the Gas Monkey YouTube channel. He was recording episodes of the Monkey Trap podcast, which covered cars alongside topics such as bad Tinder dates, NFTs, and the general texture of his life, in a way that was entirely inconsistent with being incarcerated. He attended SEMA. He maintained 3 million Instagram followers. He opened Gas Monkey Ice House, north of Dallas, in May 2025, a venue with 28 beers on tap and pop-up car shows. The man the internet was claiming was in prison was opening a bar. Which season of Fast and Loud do you think was the best? And do you think the show could come back in some form? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.